The next thing that we have to discuss here, the types of rocks. I have told you already that there are three types of rocks you can find out in the environment. Very first is kind of igneous rocks, which is also called as new rocks. So that's why the water present in the igneous rocks is also called as new water. Then we have the sedimentary rocks, the second type of rock. And then we have the third type of rock, which is called as the metamorphic rock. So how the formation of the igneous rocks takes place? So the igneous rocks are made from the solidification of magma or lava. Now, what is the difference between magma and lava? So if the liquid, you can say liquid form of the metals, elements or minerals, if you can find out below the soil surface, which is in very high temperature, so that would be termed as magma. And if it comes out with the help of earthquake or maybe any volcanic eruption, so now that is termed as lava. So lava is basically the liquid portion of that elements or maybe that minerals in the surface of the soil or in the surface of the earth. So that would be now termed as lava. So both are same. If it is, you can find out in the surface, that would be lava. If it is in the below soil zone, that would be your magma. And what is the characteristic of the igneous rocks? So generally no layers are formed, and these are the hardest of all the types of the rocks. So these are the igneous rocks or very new type of rocks. Then what will happen to these igneous rocks? These igneous rocks will come to the surface of the soil or come to the surface of the earth. And now due to the effect of the water, air, or the multiple living organisms, whatever interacting with these rocks will just disintegrate these rocks into smaller particles, and that will taken away with the help of water or maybe air. Maybe any river will take away, maybe flow of air will take away. And then in the course of time, in any new area, there would be these deposits would be layered at a single layer. Then after some time, another new type of igneous rocks will form, and their substrate will also come and make a layer here. So these layer by layer formation of these weather materials takes place on the surface. So now you can see that multiple layers are formed here. These layers are what? These layers are just the weathered part of the igneous rocks. And then through the compaction of these sediments, a new type of rock is formed. Compaction will take place due to the effect of temperature, due to the effect of pressure in the atmosphere, and the compaction will ultimately lead to a new type of rock formation. This type of rock is called as the sedimentary rocks. So these are formed through the compaction of the sediments coming from the igneous rocks. The characteristic is that distinctly layered, because the different layers of the sediments you can find out. So the rock is also layered in multiple layers, and these are easy to crumble as compared to the igneous rocks. That much hardness you cannot find out in the sedimentary rocks. This is the second type of rocks. Then we have the third type of rocks. So these are formed when there would be transformation of the older rocks takes place. Now suppose this sediment, when there is sediment formation, and this will lead to, or this will come to a very high pressure zone, as well as because this is below the earth surface, there is a very high temperature as well. So due to the impact of very high pressure and a very high temperature, a transformation of these things will take place, and this will lead to a formation of very new type of rock, which is not sedimentary as well as not igneous, due to this effect of temperature and pressure. And this is called as the metamorphic rocks, because metamorphosis takes place here or transformation takes place here. The characteristic is that it may have or may not have the layers. Both are possible. From the igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks can be formed, and from the sedimentary rocks, the metamorphic rocks can be formed. Both is possible here in this scenario. And it is relatively harder as compared to the sedimentary rocks. So this is the characteristic of the metamorphic rocks. So these all are the three different types of rocks. And I hope basic of these three different types of rocks is very clear to you. So here one by one, we have to discuss the details of all these types of rocks. So as we have discussed, the igneous rocks formed out of the magma or lava from the interior or of the earth, which is coming out. If it is present in the interior of earth, it would be called as magma. If it you can find out in the surface of the earth coming out with the help of any volcanic eruption, maybe any earthquake, so that can be termed as lava. And the rocks which is formed through it is called as primary rocks. These primary rocks are what? These primary rocks are the igneous rocks. So either you can call it primary rock or maybe called it igneous rocks. The igneous rocks is coming from the word ignis, and it is from a Latin word which means fire. So rock which is created with the help of fire, that would be called as igneous rocks. These are formed when magma solidifies. It can be of also two types. So the first type here is the intrusive rocks, which is also called as the plutonic rocks. Both the names are important here. Always remember the primary, igneous, intrusive, plutonic. Sometimes in the examination, they can ask you questions from the intrusive name. Maybe sometimes they will ask you questions from the plutonic name. So both the names are important here. So these formed due to the magma solidification, which you can find out in the interior of the earth or below the earth's surface. And the rocks which are created with the help of these intrusive or plutonic type of reaction, those are the granite rock on gabbro rock. Both are the types of rocks. Both are the examples of the igneous rocks. And which type of igneous rocks? The intrusive type of the igneous rocks, granite and gabbro. The granite and gabbro both are coarse grain type of rocks. That's why the late crystallization will take place. So late crystallization, why? Late crystallization because the temperature is not very low in the surface zone of the soil. The temperature is also very high. So the cooling would be slow down. So if cooling would be slow down, so there would be late crystallization. And if there would be late crystallization, so the solid pellets would be formed there, and those are the coarse grains. So the whole structure of the granite and gabbro is coarse grain, and also late crystallization takes place here. Then we have the extrusive type of rocks, extrusive or volcanic type of rocks. These formed due to lava solidification on the surface of the earth. The example of the extrusive rocks here are the basalt and the rhyolite. And both are fine grained because the crystallization is very fast. And why crystallization is very fast? Because of the lower temperature available on the surface of earth. So automatically this will cool down very quickly. So early crystallization will take place, and because early crystallization is taking place, so the no pellet formation or the coarse grain formation will take place there. So that's why the whole type of rock is made up of the fine grains. So these are the fine grain rocks. So I hope the examples as well as the types of the igneous rocks is clear to you. The examples as well as types both are very important here. So remember it very carefully. Now, there is another type of classification which can be done on the types of igneous rocks. So the rocks, igneous rocks are again divided in different types based on the pH or based on the nature of the rock, whether the rock is acidic, whether the rock is basic. So that will again depend on the material through which that particular rock is formed. So if that material is acidic, so acidic type of rock will form. If that material is basic, so basic type of rocks will form. So the example here are the acidic rocks. Acidic rocks would be those rocks where the silica content inside these rocks would be more than 66%. So if silica content is more than 66% in any igneous type of rocks, that is acidic type of igneous rocks. Example here are the granite and rhyolite. Both are the acidic type of igneous rocks. Then we have the intermediate rocks. Silica content here is 66 to 52% in these rocks. An example here are diorite and andesite. So the examples you have to remember, do not skip them. Then we have the basic type of rocks where the silica content is very less. It is 52 to 44% in these rocks. And this is the nature of these rocks are basic in nature. So basic rocks example here are the basalt and gabbro. And then we have the ultra basic rocks where the silica content is less than 44%. And the only example of the ultra basic rock is dunite. So these all are the different types of igneous rocks based on the pH, acidity or basicity of the material of these rocks, and These all are the examples of these rocks. Then the very main two types of big rocks, igneous rocks, are the granite and basaltic. So what is the difference between the granite and basalt? Let's see. The granite is a kind of light colored rock, while the basalt is dark colored rock. Why? Because basalt is mainly made up of the clay material or the ferromagnesium material, while the granite is made up of the high silica content, not ferromagnesium material. So that's why it is very obvious that granite are the light colored rocks and basalt are the dark colored rocks. Granite are light due to the high silica content. Basalts are dark because of the high amount of ferromagnesium silicates, or you can say clay. So because clay is also made up of the same thing, ferromagnesium silicate. And we know that clay soil is darker in color. So remember that. The example of the minerals present in this granite rock is feldspar and quartz, which is very common type of mineral that you can find out on the earth surface. While the basaltic type of rock is formed with the help of olivine, pyroxene type of minerals. So these are the other group of minerals. Then formed by the crust minerals, which you can find out mainly in the crust, the upper surface of the earth, while the basalt are formed by the mantle minerals. These all are the mantle minerals like olivine and pyroxene. Then granite are acidic in nature. We have already seen silica content is very high here, 66%. More than that, basic in nature, the basaltic rocks having the silica content of 52 to 44% range only. And the granite rocks forms the less fertile soil by the weathering, while the basaltic forms more fertile soil by the weathering because of the very obvious basic in nature or high pH, which supports more growth of the plant life there as compared to the acidic nature, because acids are not good. So according to that, high acidity soil would be also not good for the plants. So the basic soil is perfect, and the basaltic type of rocks generally form those basic type of the soil by the weathering process, which is more fertile in nature. So this is the all difference between the granite and basalt. Now, how to find out the weathering sequence of the different type of igneous rocks? So there is a trick to see more weathered rock is which one and less weathered rock is which one. For that trick, you have to remember the grain size, coarser or fine, the acidic basic nature of the all minerals, and then the color, dark and light. So the very first thing that you have to check in the weathering sequence, the first thing that you have to see, that is the grain size. If the coarse grain size you can find out, then the weathering would be high as compared to the fine grained. Then if suppose grain size are equal in both the types of rocks, then you have to find out the acidic and basic nature of the weathering of the rocks. So here, if a basic type of rock is present, then weathering would be high as compared to the acidic. Acidic would be always less. And suppose this is also a draw, why you cannot see the grain size as well as you cannot find out the sequence with the help of acidic basic nature. Then you have to go towards the color of the material, which is of that rock. If it is darker in color, so the weathering would be high. If it is lighter in color, then weathering would be low. So according to that, let's find out the different rocks and their weathering sequence as compared to each other. Before going to comparison, this grain size should be clear to you. The coarser grain size are generally formed by the intrusive rocks. So this is formed by the intrusive rocks, and fine grain are generally formed by the extrusive rocks. Or you can say these are the plutonic rocks and these are the volcanic rocks. So you have to see the grain size or the intrusive or extrusive criteria first. If it is not clear with that, then go to the acidic basic criteria. If it is not clear, then go to the only color criteria. So with the help of all these three, you will get more weathering or less weathering sequence of the materials here. So let's see the first example here. Let's see the relationship between the granite and basalt. So granite is, as you all know, that is a plutonic type of rock or intrusive type of rock. While the basalt is the volcanic type of rock or the extrusive type of rock. So this is the fine grain and the granite is coarser grain. So granite will have the more weathering, while the basalt will have less weathering. Now compare the granite and rhyolite. So granite is again a kind of intrusive rock. So intrusive means coarse grain, and rhyolite is a fine grain which is extrusive or volcanic type of rock. So again granite will have more weathering, while the rhyolite will have less weathering. Relationship between the granite and gabbro, now both are the plutonic rocks or both are the intrusive type of rocks. So in this scenario, you cannot get the weathering sequence by the grain size. You have to see the acidic and basic nature. And here granite is acidic in nature, while gabbro is basic in nature. So on that sequence, basic will have more weathering. So gabbro will have the more weathering, while the granite will have less weathering. Then let's see the rhyolite and basalt. The rhyolite and basalt will also have same type of relationship. Both are the volcanic or both are the extrusive, both are the fine grained rocks. But while in the case of acidicity and basicity, rhyolite is here acidic in nature, similar to the granite, while basalt is basic in nature. So basalt will this time have more weathering, while the rhyolite will have less weathering. This is the relationship between the basalt and rhyolite. Rhyolite and gabbro, it will be solved with the help of grain size because gabbro here is the intrusive rock or that is a coarse grain, and while the other one, the gabbro here is the our gabbro is the intrusive rock, and while the rhyolite is our extrusive rock. So in this scenario, here the rhyolite will have fine grain, so rhyolite will have the less weathering, while this will have the more weathering. Because gabbro here is a kind of intrusive rock. Intrusive means which is a kind of coarse grain. So coarse grain will more weathered as compared to the fine grain. Fine grain is the rhyolite. This is the relationship between them. Then what is left here? Only one is left here, that is the basalt and gabbro. So basalt is again extrusive type, so less weathering, and gabbro less. Gabbro will have the more weathering. So that is how you can find out the relationship between the weathering sequence of all the different types of the rocks that you can see here. So this is the one method that you can follow. Another method, you can just remember this chart, just make granite, basalt, rhyolite, gabbro and connections between them. The granite will have more and more in these two sides. So other two sides will have less and less. That is very obvious. Then granite, other side would be only one side would be less. So gabbro would be more here. And then here we have already seen less. Here you have seen less. So this time this cross would be more. And because this is more, this cross would be less. And the other two are also less. And either all three are more. These all three more and these all three less. And here two are more, one is less. Here two are less, one is more. So you can remember that as well. So by just remembering that chart, you can remember. Otherwise, you can go with the sequence like I go. That is, I always see the grain size. According to that, I try to decide. And if suppose only in this diagonal section that is not true, you have to see the acidicity and basicity of the rocks. And according to that, you can decide whether the weathering sequence would be high or low. So I hope that is clear to you all. Easily you can find out the weathering sequence of the two different types of rocks here. Another time I can provide you, this is more, and this is less. So if this is less, so this would be more, and here all the sides are more. And this is less, this is less, this is less, all the sides. Now this time this side would be only moved and this is less, this is less. So that's how you can remember it easily. I hope this is clear to you all.